Hey, what's going on? This is Brian Pickowicz here, and I'm so excited to be connecting with you in this video today when we're talking about the 5 steps to make meditation and mindfulness more practical and helpful in your fitness and lifestyle journey. And so you might have heard about mindfulness, you might have heard about meditation, and maybe you're someone who is like I used to be, and you think, well, I don't want to meditate, I'm not sure how to meditate, or you get frustrated with meditation, or maybe you're just hearing about this for the first time. And so my intention with this video is to give you a very seamless and simple way for you to implement mindfulness and to really break down why it's a powerful tool for us to really create in our journey so that it's a lot easier in the space that we're in to step away from our current habits or behaviors and really start to create new patterns that allow us to grow and make the progress that we want. Now, when we talk about mindfulness, if you've heard anything about mindfulness, maybe you've seen it on other fitness channels, maybe you've seen it on people who are talking about meditation, or maybe you've just heard it in passing by, but you're not necessarily sure what it actually means. I want to break it down simply because mindfulness is just an ability and a psychological pattern that allows us to experience this present moment, allows us to really understand and observe our energy, our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions while we're here in this moment. And so if you think about being mindful, you're able to be here and think about all these different things you're experiencing. And the cool thing is that it can be attached to anything in your life. So it can be when you're driving the car, it can be when you're brushing your teeth, when you're exercising, when you're eating food. Mindfulness gives us the ability to separate ourselves from what would typically be a habitual action and really start to redirect our attention towards the patterns that we want to create. So if you think about someone who eats mindlessly, someone who eats mindlessly might be stressed and they might be just going through the motions. But when we're able to shift to mindfulness, we're able to really understand, like, okay, why am I eating this way? Why am I behaving this way? What's creating this pattern inside me? And when we start to practice mindfulness, which we're going to talk about today, it really allows us to develop the patterns that we want to create. And now, if you're trying to lose weight, get in shape, and change your lifestyle habits, we both know it's not an easy task. And the reason why it's not easy is because for so many of us, a lot of these patterns and habits have been created for years upon years upon years, maybe even decades. I know for some of my clients, they're in positions where they're in their 40s or 50s, and some of the habits that they've had for almost 20 or 30 years. And reworking those habits don't just come through wishful thinking. It doesn't just come through willpower, and it also doesn't happen overnight. And so that's why today we want to talk about 5 simple steps that you can use to improve your mindfulness. And so mindfulness does come through a form of meditation, mindfulness meditation. And there's different forms of meditation that you can learn more about, but mindfulness meditation is really the ability to sit and be present with yourself. Now, you can do this in the car, hopefully not when you're driving. You can do this before you go to work. I do it in the morning. And if you're hearing the word meditation, you're thinking of someone who's sitting there going Om, or someone who is a yogi, and you're really thinking of more of the traditional sense, that's great, but you don't have to have this intense relationship with mindfulness and meditation in order to get the benefits from it. And if you've tried meditation and you've thought to yourself, like, well, I can't shut my brain off, I have all these different thoughts, it's so struggling, or it's such a struggle because I want to be able to get the most out of this and I just can't shut my brain off, and it's frustrating because then when I sit there, I think of all the million things that are going on, I think of all the things I have to do that day, or I think about the things that I'm supposed to be doing right now and I could be spending my time more effectively. If that is you, first off, you're not alone. It's completely normal, and it's a normal feeling to be in that pattern. But the question that I want to ask you is, do you like being that way? Because if it's a pattern when you're experiencing meditation and when you're trying to meditate, then I can almost guarantee it's a pattern in other areas of your life. Now, why do I know it's a pattern, and why am I talking about this? Because I used to literally be in the same place you are, and I still am in some sense. But for me, my personal story with meditation is one that is very traditional, meaning like it didn't just happen overnight. It was something I started to introduce slowly and slowly and slowly, but it started to have massive benefits and massive compounds as far as how the habit grew into something more productive long term. Let me explain. So for me, I started meditating when I first was in college. When I was in college, I was 21 years old. I decided to start my first business as a personal trainer in my college gym. I started competing in bodybuilding, started building a personal brand. I was working full time, going to school, and my life was going really well. I felt empowered about the thoughts of like where I was going, but I started to experience anxiety. And between all the things I had going on and some of the personal challenges that I had in my life, seeing some of my family members get sick, a real stressful, toxic relationship, just different aspects of my lifestyle and my relationships that were very unfulfilling and emotionally draining, I had this whole entangled circumstance and situation that I just wasn't sure how to address. And I had a friend who introduced me to meditation. And so I said, okay, well, I know that one of my mentors, or one of the people that I consider an online mentor, Tim Ferriss, really talked a lot about meditation. I know that this other mentor that I had was really into it. So why don't I give it a shot? And I started to meditate. Now, it wasn't easy. It wasn't something I did every day. It was just something I started to do slowly, slowly, slowly. And I felt amazing doing it. I started to feel empowered. I started to feel less stressed. My anxiety started to decrease. But then I backed away from it because it wasn't something I felt great about doing every day. I would sit down and have anxious thoughts, or I would think about all the things I could be working on, and it just wasn't productive. And I felt the same way that maybe some of you are feeling right now, or maybe you felt in the past when you're trying to meditate. And so what really changed for me was I started to see success in my business and in my bodybuilding and in the things I was executing on. And at the same time, I started to experience a pretty intense, constant feeling of anxiety. Wherever I would go, I would think about like, what are people thinking about me? What are people saying about me? Because I was getting a lot of judgment on social media. And for me, it took having a panic attack to realize like, hey, this isn't normal. And this isn't something I want to continue with. And the benefits I had seen from meditation gave me more proof and evidence that I needed to shift into a position of mindfulness to really understand, first off, myself. How was I going to also bridge the gap from where I was, a kid living with his parents as a post-grad, starting his first business, competing in bodybuilding, and trying to build an online coaching company in 2016, which was pretty unheard of, and the gap of like that next step, like how am I going to actually be successful with this endeavor? And there was this gap of belief, and I was like, at the end of the day, I believe that the biggest challenge for any level of success and progress is ultimately what we show up as. It comes down to us. So it's like, okay, if I am not seeing the results, it's because I am not doing the work. And I knew that these patterns that I had between anxiety and just also being a very frustrated person, I was always angry and I was always intense and I would just have these mood swings. I was like, this isn't how I want to live my life. And so I started to really get intentional about working on myself. And it was as simple as waking up in the morning, sitting down on my bed after I made it, and I would put meditation music in my ears and just meditate. Like, what am I trying to produce? What's today look like? And those simple practices led me to bridge the gap of who I was and where I wanted to be. I was able to connect with so many different clients. I was able to help so many people change their lives. My business grew at a tremendous rate. And more importantly, I was so much happier. And so why am I telling you this? Am I telling you this because you have to go and become an online fitness coach or a lifestyle coach? Probably not. That might not be your goal. But there's probably something that you want to improve on. And if you're watching this video, then that's 100% the case. These simple practices, which I'm going to give you right now, are what I implemented and what I have my clients implement when we're starting meditation. And if you can just focus on these 5 little things and become more mindful in your experience, I'm not going to guarantee that you're automatically going to become who you want to be, but I will guarantee that your ability to observe yourself and then start to take the necessary actions to change your behavior will happen. And so I'm going to give you 5 simple tips, like I said, to start meditating and become more mindful today. And the first thing is, when you're starting this process, make it really easy. What that ultimately means is start with something very small. Start with something very tangible. Don't go and say, okay, well, I want to become more mindful. I want to start meditating. And that means I'm going to meditate today for half an hour. I'm going to meditate every day for 25 minutes. And I'm going to just do this all. Because the point of meditation is not to add something in. It's to create space to remove things. And so when we're observing ourselves in meditation, we're actually in a position where we can see what no longer serves us and then start to take it away. So for me, like I said, I'm not naturally a calm and relaxed person. It's taken me a tremendous amount of work to remove the things that used to be stressful behaviors or tendencies or triggers in my own personal journey. And so what I was able to see through meditation is like, okay, well, I don't want to be that way. I'm going to start to rework that. But that also took about 4 years to do. So the simple action is to start where you're at right now, create space for yourself to observe, and see what you can take out. Now, what starting easy really means is give yourself 3 to 5 minutes a couple times a week, or give yourself a few minutes in the morning. Don't get overwhelmed with trying to add something in that's supposed to remove stress. Don't feel the obligation, like, oh, I just have to meditate. Because if you start to approach it in that manner, it's like having to go to the gym. Oh, I have to go to the gym. Whenever we show up with that energy, how likely are we to follow through consistently? We have to really attach it towards something positive. And so understanding like, hey, something simple, something actionable, measurable. It's very simple and easy, and keep it short and simple. Sometimes, for instance, when I have clients who are interested in adding meditation to their lifestyle, I have them just take 7 deep breaths before they go to work. So before you go to work, take 7 deep breaths. And think of just removing. Not thinking of how do I want my day to be, just try to be. And so that's the first thing, is make it easy, make it simple, make it short, and make it actionable. So easy is the real key. And then the next thing is focus on your breath. So when you're starting to meditate, there's a tendency to want to feel like we have to get an answer, right? Like I'm meditating so I can figure out all these things and then start to do all the things. And if that comes up for you, then that's amazing. But the whole point is to be here now. And the most helpful way to do that is to sit with your legs parallel, your hands parallel. Personally, I fold my hands on my lap, or I'll hold them on my lap. I don't sit there like this or anything like that. I just sit here and I breathe in and I breathe out. That's all I focus on. Now, personally too, when I first started meditating, there was 2 things I added in, and this might help you. When I breathe in, I try to visualize the color green. So like abundance, life, vibration, happiness, like whatever that color is that gives you life, imagine that color. And then when you exhale, try to think of release. For me, it was the color black or sometimes red, but just getting rid, just removing some of the stress, removing some of the drama, and being able to be present. And I would repeat that focus, if you will. And then as I got more into meditation, I would imagine those same colors, and then I would repeat some of the feelings that I wanted to experience. So whether that was peacefulness or calm, or even as cliche as it sounds, I would remind myself like, hey, let me be a light for someone today. I'm here to help people. I'm not here to, take their money and then hope they do the best. I'm truly here to help people. In that meditative process, that feeling was the connection that I wanted to have. Now for you, that can be a bunch of things. Maybe it's a connection with your husband or connection with your kids, or maybe you want to be a more confident person, so you're trying to walk yourself through that experience of what confidence feels like. But the biggest thing is just focus on your breath, and if you can implement these two things, great. But if not, don't worry, don't judge yourself. Now, you might be saying to yourself, like, okay, great, I'm going to start off meditating, it's going to be easy, and I'm going to keep it simple and easy, and then at the same time I'm going to focus on my breath, but what happens if I can't silence my brain? What happens if I have all these thoughts? Brian, I don't want to have these thoughts anymore. They're stressful, they're anxiety provoking, or I just don't want them. Well, the next step is to create a pause. So if you think about someone who has an anxious thought, or maybe think about a stressful thought that you've had in the past, there's this tendency to allow that stress to become bigger, become bigger, become bigger. Maybe a good example is thinking of eating a cookie. How often do we eat mindlessly and we're like, okay, I'm going to have a bite of the cookie, or pizza, I'm going to have a bite of the pizza. Oh, I'll have another bite. Oh, this pizza's so good, I'm going to have the whole slice. Oh, I just had the whole slice. I'm going to have another slice. Oh no, I just had 2 slices. Why am I doing this? Oh, now I'm guilty. Now I feel judged. I'm going to have another piece, and that's the end of the road. I'm just going to wait till tomorrow to start again, right? If you've been in a similar situation, which my expectation is you have been, because I think that that's a pretty normal thing, whether it's nutrition, stress, anxiety, just some kind of rabbit hole that happens and you just keep tumbling forward. If you've ever been there, it's because what happens is we don't have a pause. There's no moment for us to come back. And it's the same thing when we're meditating and we have thoughts. Now, meditation is a great arena to practice these things. So if you're in a position where that kind of thinking happens to you, it's okay, it's normal. It happens to a lot of people. It happens to me. But when we create a pause, we can ask ourselves mindful questions in the moment and get back to center. So for instance, if you're eating that cookie, before you have the next bite or before you have the next cookie, you can say, okay, what do I want right now? Why am I eating this cookie? Do I need to have the cookie? Is eating the cookie going to help me reach my goals? What could I feel good about if I put the cookie down? How could you remind yourself that? Oh, is it eating this cookie going to serve me? Okay, well, no, I'm just going to put it back. That's your pause. Your pause is an instantaneous split between where you think you're going and where you are. And it allows you to recenter and then make the next best choice. So for instance, if you're meditating, that pause might be, okay, well, and this is a real thought that I've had in the past, so like I'm on the bus with you, but like, okay, well, I remember when I was a kid, I had this experience, and I remember my favorite show was this, and oh, well, what was the theme song to that song, and oh, who played the music there? Oh, wow, that was my favorite band of all time. Remember when I went and saw them? Oh, I remember my dad took me to that concert. Oh, I wonder how my dad's doing, right? It's just a rabbit hole of like these thoughts that just come up, and we have no idea where they come from. So what happens next is, why am I thinking this? Is this productive? Does this serve me? Oh, it doesn't? Okay, I'm just going to go back to my breath. And so that pause is not guilty, it's not judgmental, it's not, why am I thinking this? It's, why am I thinking this? Okay, do I need to think that way again? Okay, I don't? All right, let's go back to center. And the cool thing about meditating this way is, like I said, becomes a practice for other areas in your life. So, for instance, if you're driving and someone pulls in front of you, why did that person do that? And then you get so angry and it just festers and fosters another tantrum or more stress or whatever. You can pull back and say, do I need that? Have I ever pulled in front of someone on accident? You know? It creates that space for us to actually have a productive thought, and that's a powerful thing when we talk about becoming more mindful. And now, once we have that pause, the next piece is see everything as neutral rather than being positive or negative. And now I know this one takes a little bit more work, and it's nothing that just happens like that, but for instance, I was having a conversation with a client recently. She's like, well, sometimes I look at my body, even though she's down 6.5 pounds, she's doing an amazing job. She's like, I still look at my body and I'm like, I judge it. I see it as not what I want it to be. And so frustrating. And so one of the thoughts that we had was, okay, well, what's something else that you could redirect your attention towards? She's like, well, I could like point out my shoulders. Like, oh, I love my shoulders, I love the way my arms are looking, I love the way my face is looking. I do see a little bit of a difference, but I feel frustrated when I think that way, because then I'm like, well, how come I don't see that with my midsection? How come I keep beating myself up? And the next thought that we were able to break down is, what if you were able to say, like, oh, I'm not happy with where my body's at. Without judgment, without the need to be perfect or the desire to have to change it overnight, but what if it just was? And that gave you the momentum, because you know that you're working on yourself. And you served it as a neutral reminder to the progress you want to make. Now, for me, one way I look at this is, there's been times where one really bad habit that I've had in the past is I'd go like this, shh, when I'm trying to think. And now, for me, I know what my intention is. I'm really struggling. I don't want to freak out. I don't want to have whatever experience that I'm having. Like internally, I want to be able to relax. But that shh, even if it's not meant to have any harm, is really rude and offensive. And I realized that. And so I also realized that because it's there and it's a habit and it's a pattern, that by me going shh and then being like, why the hell did I do that? It makes me so angry. I need to stop doing that. Oh, now I feel like crap because I'm shushing someone, and that makes me feel awful about myself. And then that creates this whole other pattern of guilt and judgment that I just don't need. I can say, okay, don't want that behavior. I'm going to separate myself. I'm going to see it as just something that I do, and I'm going to stop putting so much emotional weight on it. Now, why is this powerful? It's powerful because then I can actually see what the next best step is. But if I engage the thought and I engage that behavior, and then I start judging myself for it, or I beat myself up like, oh, why did I do that? Well, what the hell? Why am I doing this? And I consistently do that, I'm reinforcing the belief that there's something wrong with me, and that I need to hold this guilt and this barrier over myself that's just not necessary, which really, from my perspective, makes it harder for me to take the next best step. Whereas if I say like, okay, I don't like that, just don't like it, I'm not going to do that anymore, I can take that next step. And it's not about BSing myself, it's not about BSing yourself, but it's about being able to see like, hey, this is how it is, and I don't want it to be that way. Plain and simple. Removing all the drama, removing all the stress, allowing to actually make the next decision. And what's great is when we start to see things as neutral, we can become aware of why we're doing it. So for me, it's like, I'm not doing that to be rude. I'm doing that because I'm having a hard time processing things. And I can explain that now. Like, hey, I'm so sorry I did that. I was having a hard time processing things. Now, where's that helpful in your life? Pretty much everywhere, but it might be helpful if you're having a hard time breaking an eating habit. If you're breaking an eating habit that is stress eating, emotional eating, boredom eating, whatever it is, that meditation, that mindfulness gives you the ability to say, okay, I'm eating this because I'm bored. Okay, what would the opposite of boredom be? What would be doing my homework right now? Okay, well maybe I'll go do that. And now we can do that in practice in the meditation when we have a thought that's frustrating. So if you have work to do, you're like, oh, well, I'm thinking of this thought, I know I have other things to do. Why am I meditating right now? Instead of getting frustrated, stepping away after that pause and being able to almost like see as a neutral observer the things that are going by and being, okay, well, I'll remember that thing, recenter. It pulls you back to the present where you can actually change the next step. And so lastly, the most important part about meditation, the most basic in its nature, is you have to practice. So it's not about being perfect. It's not about just showing up and having it be a habit just like that. But the more we practice these things, the more we practice these patterns and habits, the more empowering they become, the easier they become, and the more productive they are for us to implement. And so if you're someone who is watching this and you're like, okay, well, I really would love to have meditation be a staple in my life. There's patterns in myself that I don't like, and now I want to rework them. You're not alone. We all deal with it. And by practicing, you create space to rework your mindset in those patterns. And so one question I had with a client recently is, do you like the way you're interacting with yourself? And if the answer is no, the great thing is that you can reshape that and re-situate yourself so you have more say in the direction that you go. So 5 things for meditation to become easier. So first off, make it easy, start small. Second is focus on your breathing. Maybe use visualization in your mind to help with you. The third thing is create a pause. Fourth thing, become neutral. And lastly, practice. So my challenge for you this week is to meditate twice, just twice for a minute or 3, and test it out. And if you love this video, please share it with a friend, comment below, let me know how it's reaching you, let me know what the most productive thing is, and if you've tried meditation, I'd love to hear from you. Lastly, please, if you love this channel, subscribe and send it to a friend. Really trying to put a lot more content here on YouTube for you all, and my intention is to help you and teach you some of the lessons I've learned from my life, learn with clients in my one-on-one setting, so that I can just help more people this year. So thank you so much. I love you, and just remember to be a light and inspire others to believe more. Cheers.